Good evening. I want to wish you a happy Black History Month. This is the last Wednesday in February, and it has just flown by. And it feels like we need to continue to celebrate Black History Month and continue to celebrate what Black folks have done for this country in this particular moment. And so, if we want to continue to celebrate, let's go ahead and do that. Our discussion today will be focusing on finding financial balance, rewriting one's money story. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, it's the relationship that one has with money, it's the way we handle it, it's the um, way that our family has told us to be about money. It's the way in which we are emotionally connected or disconnected to money. And I am so glad that we have Kara Stevens with us to offer some additional insight. Okay, so I want to welcome in my wonderful sister friend coming in to talk to us, Sister Kara Stevens. Let's bring her in. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. If you wouldn't mind, if you could just introduce yourself and just say a little bit about just who you are and how we got here.
Thank you so much for having this platform, so much for thinking of me to be a part of it. My name is Kara Stevens, and I'm the founder of the Frugal Feminista. And I really talk at the intersection of emotions and money, especially when it comes to communities of color and especially Black women, where our overall experience collectively has been rooted in financial trauma. And I think it's important for us in any type of conversation around closing the wealth gap or building generational wealth,
Yeah.
we get to the actual stories and belief systems that we have internalized from larger systemic factors and how they have become part of our belief system.
Right.
And being able to dismantle that will be able then to really access wealth, build it, and sustain it. And in a way that feels affirming, in a way that feels spacious, in a
Mhm.
way that brings everybody along. Well, you can't bring everybody along, but the ones that need to be along, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They get to come along.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for that. I have to just give you a little bit of an origin story. My husband and I were traveling, I think we were in LA, and we were driving out to Temecula, and I was listening to Black Women Leaders podcast, and we were listening to Heal Your Relationship with Money, and we're going across, it was about maybe a hour and a half ride, and we're listening to the whole back and forth. You're having this fantastic conversation, and he turns to me, he was like, you need to talk to that sister. I don't know how you reach her, but you need to talk to her. And I was like, really? He was like, yes, you have a money story and it is not healthy. And I was like, you know what, you're
Mhm.
right. And it's been, I grew up in poverty. I don't think I knew it until I got to college that I was poor, because everybody was working class poor. But I knew we didn't have a lot of it, and I knew we had to watch it, take care of it. And so I definitely am a person who holds on to money. Um, I definitely was one of those 20-year-olds who got that first credit card that didn't do well with it. Was in college and just kind of like let it go, and then finally dug myself out of that hole. But I was so surprised to hear him say to me, babe, you should talk to somebody because as he was listening to what you all were talking about, he was absolutely like looking at me like, is that resonating for you? Is that you? And I was like, yeah, I got a
Mhm.
story. I was raised with my grandparents. They did the best they could, but my grandmother worked multiple jobs. She did hair, she cleaned homes, she was a barmaid, and so money was tight, but there was always food. And my grandfather was a veteran, and he had a regular, I don't want to say a regular job, but because he was a veteran and he worked at the VA hospital, he had a proper paycheck. But he was stingy as hell, and he would not give my grandmother extra money for anything. She'd have to like sneak in his wallet and take it out, and she'd kind of give me that look like, "Don't you say nothing." And I'd shut my mouth. And so I would see how she moved around, and how she tipped. And so I'm always a little bit like, let me just make sure I have enough. Even when we have enough, this it's just interesting. I find that I absolutely have a money story, and I have been going through your book, and I have to show it, Heal Your Relationship with Money, because it is it's healing. It's healing, and I'm not all the way through it, and
Mm-hmm.
it does take time to kind of go through it and really be honest with yourself about the prompts that you ask. And I appreciate it because I am an educator. And when I read it, I was like, oh, this person is an educator because this is a workbook and you're working through it. So it was good to hear that from you. So I just had to
Yes.
share that because that's how that was how I found you. And I would say the second time, the first time I was listening to Blacks at Global, and you were on Krishan's podcast talking about either rewriting money stories. And I was like, okay, this is a sign. Now I'm hearing her here. Now I'm hearing her in this other place. I was like, okay, I definitely need to reach out. And I'm so grateful that you said yes, so that we could
Oh,
have
yeah.
this conversation.
Yeah, I'm really, first of all, I'm a little bit nosy. Like, what did you tab? Like, I love when
Ah!
I see tabs. I'm an educator, so I'm like, what are you annotating, friend? Like, where
Oh,
are we? Like, what's
oh,
in the
listen.
margins?
There's a lot in the margins, girl. We can go down there.
I don't know all your business, but I'm just, I'm always curious to see the tabs and,
Yes. Well, you know what? I definitely, the first tab is really early on, and it is
hmm
trying not to feel scarcity, but always having a heightened sense when it comes to money. And so that was me reflecting on like page 19 where you're talking about today's life work, and it was what role have emotions played in your decision to either overspend or oversave or your current state. And since you have like an emotional connection to money, what does it look like? So that was the first tab. And
hmm
then I put, how does one release themselves from their past money story, even when they're not in the space that they were, right? So I'm
hmm
not there, right? I am definitely middle class. We work two jobs, we do what we have to do. There isn't an abundance, but there isn't scarcity. And I do want to live in an abundance mindset because I know if you live that way, you can attract it in that way. And so
hmm
just thinking about how folks, young folks and older folks, especially if I'm in my 50s, I'm getting close to retirement, and I want to have an abundant stance. I don't want to have a stance of scarcity. And so just thinking about how does one do that? How does one release themselves from the story that they have kind of told themselves? Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
I mean, we can start there, but I think that's
Yeah.
powerful. That's the
Yeah.
essential. I mean, that's the million-dollar question. I think that part of the release is to recognize the power of the beginning parts of that money story.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that, not sure where it is in the book right now, but I talk about when you think about the various financial selves you've been, like who,
Yeah.
like when you were 16, like
Yeah.
who's that financial self and who actually is calling the shots right now with your finances? It
Mm.
could still be, the little girl that saw her grandmother go, shh, you know, and she may be the one that you can't tell. It's, a secret. This is, you have to hide. There's something between men and women. Men don't give, so women have to be is it not serendipitous? They have to take money quietly in
Mm-hmm.
order to get power. And so, what I often like for anyone that I work with is to kind of do a autobiography of the various selves that have
Mm.
played a role in creating the narrative and what message did each of them get, right? And I also would say that there's also a beauty in that, in the sense that that 6-year-old self who has this idea of hiding or making sure you keep secrets or making sure there's enough money, even if it may not feel the healthiest way.
Mm-hmm.
You can thank her for being resourceful. You can thank her for being
Yeah.
loyal. You can thank her for all those things and then release her. I think it's important for you to talk to her and say, what would you have needed to hear right then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you might have needed to hear that, baby, this isn't normal, but we have to do this for survival. But when you have a husband or you
Mm-hmm.
have a partner, here's how we ideally would want it to be. So
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't normalize the
Right.
dysfunction, but it also contextualizes the necessity of survival tactics, which is what your grandma
Yeah.
did, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Absolutely.
think it's being able to hold various messages and ideas around money at the same time, bless them for getting you to a certain point, but blessing them to leave so you can usher in new ones. And I think part of that is also finding out, what do you want to believe about money? I know we use
Mm-hmm.
these words like abundance, they're very abstract,
Mm-hmm.
but is it that you want to be able to spend money on things of luxury and not feel that there's no money in the account? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to feel like you can give generously and not worry
Right.
about where the next paycheck is coming from? So
Mm-hmm.
the question of, it's a two-part thing. It's not denying the past. It's not even denigrating the past. It's acknowledging the past for the function it played, looking for the positive or the intentionality of some of those behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
understanding them for what they are in their context, and then being able to take some of them with you in a way that makes sense for your current situation.
Yeah.
And furthermore, it's the present of the numbers as well. I think for a lot of us, you haven't been able to catch up with the reality of your finances.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll never be a number, it's a feeling that you want to feel. You want to feel abundant. And
Mm-hmm.
feeling abundant means being able to identify, well, what are your values in certain areas? What are the things that actually make you feel abundant?
Mm-hmm.
Like what activities, what people, what
Mm-hmm.
times of year, what at what are you doing, what are you smelling like all the things,
Yeah.
like a kind of like a 360 central experience with
Mm-hmm.
what does it look like, and
Yeah.
then finding the price tag for it, and then figuring out, looking at your total net worth, and then looking at the price of some of those things and realizing that you do the numbers, it may be a small percentage of your total net worth
Right.
that is allowing you to feel abundant. So I think a part of that, within that, is the permission that you give yourself to begin to even daydream or conceptualize or cast a vision for
Right.
what a personalized experience of abundance means at this time in your life.
Yeah. That is so powerful. Every
Mhm.
every thought around acknowledging the past, but
Mhm.
looking at what does the number offer you as far as feelings, and
Mhm.
that abundance isn't a, it isn't a number, per se. And so I
Yeah.
think, that's one to sit with for, yeah, that's one for me to sit with. And I love the idea that there are many various selves of you, because of course there are, right? And there are many points in your life that you can go back to, right? And so the 6 year old, the 8 year old, the 16, the 20, the 30 year old with a new baby, all of it gives you a different moment of what's that money story that you are carrying and who's showing up
Mhm.
in that conversation at that time. So that's a powerful thought. Thank you for
Mhm.
that, for
You're welcome.
sure. I would say throughout the book, there's this idea that we get financial beliefs from various places. Are there are there some common myths that hold us back from our financial success or seeing ourselves in a different way because of what we've seen from family and society? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that um, Similar to, and I think it's a good thing based on what you said earlier at the top of our conversation, that you didn't know that you were working class until you went to college,
Mm.
which showed that there was love. There were other
Oh
things that
yeah.
was there,
Yeah.
right? So that's important. So to kind of answer your question in a different way, I would say that wait, the misconceptions are, you have you have cultural conditioning
Mm-hmm.
that impacts how we feel. And you mentioned that your father was a veteran. Now, if he had any access to the GI Bill or was denied the GI Bill, there's
Mm-hmm.
systemic factors that will fairly enough give him belief that you're never going to make it in this world
Right.
because you're black.
Right.
And it has been a survival strategy to protect us from great disappointment, for,
Absolutely.
this sense of a dream deferred, like the boy, like
Mm-hmm.
the it's about. So it's a defense mechanism. It's to protect us. We also have to realize the limits of that we have to be able to update those strategies to see where they're no longer
Mm-hmm.
helpful and adaptive, and they're maladaptive. So I would say culturally, and then when Black people talk about culture, you can't not put in systems of racism, oppression, and marginalization as part of
Right.
our money story, as a
Right.
default. So you have that as often a common experience for people of color and Black people in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and then you
Mm-hmm.
have gendered perspectives on it when you bring in things like, say, religion. So, the
Right.
majority of Black people in America, this is not me stereotyping, it's a fact, are Christian, and then
Mm-hmm.
second Muslim. I think the denomination is Baptist. So,
Right.
if Christianity plays a key role in how we respond to the world with this particular spiritual lens, and we get a lot of our life advice, how we move morals and ethics
Right.
from the church, and the church has a particular spin on what abundance, what poverty, what deprivation is, what
Right.
is holy, what is demonic. That
Right.
is going to impact how you respond to money as well. So we may say we want
Absolutely.
abundance, but there's a part of me that says only
Mm.
rich people not going to no heaven. I'm trying
Right.
to get
Right.
that
I'm
can't
trying to go to heaven. Right.
before a rich man can.
Right.
So I want my soul to be saved.
Right. Right. I'm gonna tithe my 10%, regardless of whether or not
Right.
there's going to be enough for the family, because I got to give my
Exactly.
10% to God first,
Right.
and
Right.
then whatever else
Right.
is left. Oh
Right.
yeah.
So when you
Oh
talk
yeah.
about conditioning, I would say for sure. So when you have those things surrounding you, and then you put into a different environment, like a college
Mm-hmm.
environment, where you're put into contact with different ideas around money, different cultures, and different socioeconomic classes, you get to bump into people saying, "What are you talking about? I can negotiate
Right.
whatever I want." That's just a suggestion. I'm not stopping there. That's what they think. That's not what I
Right.
think.
Right.
Versus, culturally speaking, what Black people can't say the whole time, it's just like, just be happy with what you get. Do you know what I mean? And so those are the various small ways
Yeah.
that we internalize ways in which we may or may not have the healthiest relationship with abundance, or
Yeah.
the healthiest relationship with, striving or wealth. And not because we're lazy or because we are less than. It's these cultural factors that are just in the water, that
Yeah.
if we don't stop and examine them, we find ourselves feeling this dissonance of, I want this, but why do I feel I can't have it?
Right.
Or
Right.
I want it, but why do I feel so bad about wanting it? And then
Mm-hmm.
you end up getting it and not holding it. So there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of factors like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that that level of culture and how we
Hmm.
come to understanding how we engage with money, sometimes we don't even think about we don't think about the importance of culture in that,
Hmm.
and definitely some of the other identities that come into play, especially, yeah, especially, I was gonna say,
Gender.
especially the church. And
Right.
being a black
Well,
woman and going to church or not going to church, or all of it. Yeah,
right.
for sure,
Right.
for sure. Um So wait, let me go back. Let me go back into my tabs and let me
Yeah.
see. Let me just go on through my tabs before I go to some of the other questions. I
Mhm.
the exercise around giving your money a name and voice.
Mm.
That one was, whew, I thought that was difficult. I didn't know what to name her. And then I decided to name her a guy. I was like, wow, usually everything I name is female. It's always she. But I was like, I'm gonna name her bruh. Like bruh. Like I was like, I don't know what to name her. And yet I was like, well, I'm gonna name her something male because it felt male to me, which is so strange. Um,
Mm.
and I was like, do what I say. Please just sit quiet and grow. I got freedom plans for you. And so I just need you to be silent while you do what I need you to do. And so
Interesting.
that was so interesting because I was like, whose voice is that? But that was what came to me in thinking
Interesting.
about naming her and thinking about a money diary. And I thought, what a solid strategy for someone and for women, not only women, but to really get a handle of that and to really name that. And then I loved how you had like the response, that the money gave so that you could have some understanding of that. How did you get there with that example?
I think I had a lot of problems with money. I mean, that's the best way to say it.
I love
And
it.
so I am definitely, I think one of my, I guess one of my gifts is being a reflective person. And I think about,
Absolutely.
I'm very metacognitive. So I, when I want to improve. So I was like, how, and also sometimes I actually hear a voice that's not mine. So when I got
Mm-hmm.
to begin want to go through this journey of healing and want to really find out, what do I really like? What are my interests versus my mom's interests? What are my interests versus what I think will get me praise and validation? What
Mm-hmm.
are the, because I grew up very much a people pleaser, because my mom was depressed when my father left, and I kind of became her wife in, all intents and purposes
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
child. So I was doing a lot of the caregiving. So I'm very, very aware of energy, aware of how people feel, almost to my detriment, because I
Right.
overfunction or had a history of overfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm aware of what I feel, but I'm also aware if me saying how I feel it will impact the overall room. I know how to move that way. And I think that skill,
Mm.
when turned on its positive side, has allowed me to go within and say, wait a minute, that's not even the voice I really believe anymore. Or
Mm-hmm.
this is where I am right now. So I know for a while, if you're talking about that section of the book where I say, they will call me Scaredy Cat Kara,
Yeah.
because I did not want to spend money. I was afraid. I thought, the world was going to end if I got the large instead of the small, or
Right,
even
right.
the medium forbid.
Oh.
Like, yeah, it was just, and I had to face to face with it, because you would see a couple things. There's a lot of data to show it. So I would say I'd want to do something, but then when it came time to put the money to the payment or the down payment, I wouldn't do it. Right.
Right.
So you can see the gap, and there's actual
Right.
data there. Or I would say I want to give 100, but I end up giving 20. Why? If
Right.
you had the 100, why not do it? So I would actually see the money, and I will also feel what it felt to actually hand over the money. And
Mm-hmm.
that's very much related to one of my most memorable money memories, when my mom was very tight and very scared to turn over money to
Mm-hmm.
buy basic things. And so I
Mm.
can pinpoint that. And
Right.
so I've always, these salient money memories that
Yeah.
determine some of your behaviors, being able as an adult to reflect on them but not be defined by them,
Right.
has allowed me to name them.
Right.
And then in naming them, I have the power to rename the future one, right?
Right. Right.
It gives so by and then you're a teacher when you talk about guided writing or shared writing, you take the
You
pen,
take the
right?
pen. Yes.
You take the pen, and it's like, how can I rewrite and rename this now that I'm aware of the inherited money story that I was provided? My mom had the pen,
Right.
I had no pen. I was
Right.
there on the rug just getting the lessons.
Just getting a
And now I'm
lesson.
like, that's the message, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
how then, as an adult, knowing that something isn't quite right, you don't want to feel this way,
Right.
or you may find you feel it in your body, you feel it in canceled plans or in dreams that aren't deferred, or you feel it in other ways in jealousy when you like, why
Right.
is that person doing the most like with their money when you really want to do the most with your money, but
Right.
you haven't get there. You get these kind of telltale signs that
Right.
something's not right. So then you
Right.
begin to say, so what if I could and there were no fear,
Right.
what would I want my relationship with money to be? And what would she say or what would he say? Right. And then I think it was calm Kara, right? I have a
Yeah.
sense of confidence. That doesn't mean
Yes.
everything. I don't, sometimes be like, what? How much is that? You know what I mean? But then I'm like, okay, I still got it. You know, even in the
Oh,
top of
God.
it, the price, I still move forward.
Right.
You
Right.
know what
Right. Oh God, I
I'm
have to laugh on that because I that must be my automatic. I'm like, it's what? How much is that?
saying? Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
reason that needs to be that. I'm like, here I can
But you,
again. My husband, the whole other side. He's like,
yeah,
you want it? Why you asking me if it's that price? Are you gonna get it? You can get it. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And there's all this I don't know. And he's just like
right,
throws his hands up. And then there are
but
other
like
things
let's
that, I don't do that to. It's so
right.
interesting.
But that's the thing. That's about to ask. What are the items where you're like, why is it that expensive? And then what's wrong with something being expensive? Right?
I
What's
know.
wrong with
If
something
it
being
really is
expensive?
quality, I guess in my
Right.
mind, I'm wondering, is it really quality? Like, should
Right.
that thing cost that amount?
Right.
And who says it shouldn't? It's also, and I have to tell you, it'll come up in other places. And this is why I felt like, as I'm going through the book, it's so important to get in touch with myself, because even when I price myself for consulting gigs and for other things, I'll say, does that seem too pricey? And I'm like, but why? I'm definitely worth it. I'm going to give them more than that, right? So why not put that number to it? Because it's a true number, So
Right.
it's an interesting moment for sure. And I
Right.
do wonder, I feel like paying for an experience is very different than paying for an item. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Mhm.
if I
Yeah.
wanted, I love to go to tennis. So buying a ticket to the U.S. Open, where I know the seat's going to be at least 350, I don't think about that 350. But I'm not going to buy a pair of 350 shoes because I don't think I need a pair of shoes that are that pricey
Right. So I think
for
you've
me.
identified your values. Right.
Right.
So I think what's clear is that it'll be different if so I think there's a couple things and it's helpful to see the distinction. Um, you like going to the US Open. And so whether they have high prices or low prices, you're going to try and figure out how to go one way or the other.
One way or the
Shoes,
other.
right? But shoes are not that important to you. So the price doesn't translate into any value to you,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I think it's important, and I think that's different than just not want to spend at all.
Right.
Like the
Right.
difference between loving the US Open, following Serena, following Coco, following the whole thing, and then
Yes.
you 100 years old, you live in Queens, New York, and you've never been
Right.
to the Flushing,
Dun-
but
dun-
you were right there because you just didn't want to pay the money,
right.
and you could have
That's a different
paid for it.
story.
Like that's a different story, and I think that's important for you as you go through your journey to be like, well, maybe I just don't value it. I just don't think it's useful. I don't think it
Yeah.
has any value, but other things do, and I think that's a key piece of growth. So you can begin to use the money that you might have used for things that didn't add value, save it, invest it, or put it toward more things that offer value.
Yeah. And I think that's something for those who are listening, identifying what has value for you and
Hmm.
then figuring out, well, if it has value to me, then the way in which I engage with it is very different than if I don't, right?
For
Because
sure.
just kind of separating the idea of that for yourself, makes
Right.
sense.
And I think it
Yeah.
also helps you understand cost better because cost is one thing, value is another. And you begin to, then it
Cost.
becomes a choose your own adventure in life because not everyone is going to see it the same way as you do.
Oh yeah.
Hence why you call it personal finances.
Yeah. That is a really good way of putting it for sure.
Mhm.
The idea of the personal. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, how can I have a few questions.
Mhm.
What do you think would be a good way for someone to work on shifting their mindset about their money story that they've been
Mhm.
carrying?
Well, I think the first step is to identify what your money story has been up to date. So, what are your beliefs? So, when you think about money, just even like a brainstormer, like when you think about money, what experiences come up, what feelings come up, what messages come up, what overall a general sense of hope, anger, resentment, avoidance, anger, all the emotions, shame, what, and then understand that there is a root to that. Like those feelings are just more of a mirror as to what has been poured into you for a while. So I would say that step one is the recognizing what that you have a money story, and probably unexamined if you haven't even thought about what you want your relationship with money to be. And if you uncover that a lot of your feelings and ideas about money aren't where you want them to be in order for you to have the kind of life that you want that requires you to interact with money in a particular kind of way. So I would
Wait,
say that's step 2.
okay. Do you think everyone has a money story?
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Everyone has a money story. For sure. Everyone has a money story because you can't be in this world without having been conditioned by religion, parents' money stories. Like you're going to inherit something from somebody, right? Whether it be right.
Good or
So
bad, exactly.
you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it if you didn't ask for it. So I think everyone has an inherited money story. And I think the goal in life is to recognize that those money stories are what you were giving, whether for the good or for the bad. And it's up to you to find out what exactly is your financial voice in the middle of
Right.
all of it. And the way you know that is when what you want and what you have don't align, or it's what
That's
you
powerful.
desire. Yeah, and I think that is where um, we begin to understand the beginnings of our money voice and the ability to rewrite our money story into one that aligns with the values that we have. And I also, in all fairness, have a little bit of grace for the origins
Yes.
of your money story because more than
Yes.
likely, this conversation around money and feelings about money is very new. It's
Yeah.
usually like you're broke or you got money and that's it, and
Right.
is where you go to stay, right?
Right.
Instead
Right.
of the relationship around money or how you feel about money. So I would say you end up realizing that even through the financial trauma, there are elements, redemptive elements of the strategy of the stories, but you have to be able to put them in their proper proportion. You don't want 90% of those experiences governing how you currently interact with money. But it's also important for you never to be afraid of your financial shadow, where the things that you grew up with, what's that got to do with you? That doesn't
Right.
define your worth. It was just
Right.
something
Right.
that happened to you and around you, but it doesn't define anything about what you can be. And I think you can find a source of strength and a source of, like I said, mercy
Yeah.
and kindness and all these different things
Yeah.
that allow you to empathize with those that
Yeah.
gave you those systems. Also, create boundaries for systems that
Yes.
oppress you. You realize that those weren't your stories to begin with, and there's an actual reason for those types of messages.
Yeah.
And then move
Absolutely.
towards an empowered perspective about what you want for you at the
Right.
family level, and even for what you want for your community at like the macro level,
Yeah.
and even at the
Yeah.
policy level. you're into, working in the community that way.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. I love the idea of giving yourself grace because we carry so much with us as we are just moving in the world and living in the world and we offer a lot of empathy. Yeah, I actually just did a video around the superpowers that I think black women have, and I think resilience is one. I think intuition is one, and I think empathy is one. And we offer that to so many other people, and we don't always offer that to ourselves. We
For sure.
don't always lean into that for ourselves. And I think, you hit that so clearly that whatever the story is that we've been carrying, that we should offer ourselves grace and realize it was kind of put on us, so to speak. It's around us. It was given to us, but it doesn't have to define who we are, and how we engage in the world, so to speak.
Hmm.
How did you grow, on your own? How did you kind of take hold of it? How did you realize and say, no, I'm not going to be like the experience I had or saw with my mother? How did you do that for yourself?
I think I had a breakdown or two before I got to that point, to be honest. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that's going to be like, it was a flowery journey in a valley
It
in the word.
wasn't.
It was not. It was not. So it was a lot of jumps and starts and starts and
Mm-hmm.
jumps
Mm-hmm.
therapy, where what I would say that one of like the linchpin moments in all of this was I was dating my then boyfriend, who's now my husband, and we were pretty serious at that time. And we, similar to you, were driving from New York to DC on a long vacation,
Mm-hmm.
and we stopped to get some gas. And he said, "Babes, let me get your credit card." And if you, I guess I couldn't see a mirror, but he was like, the look on your face
Ooh.
was just like, "You trying to take me for my papers?" You know what I
Right.
mean? Like he was kind
Yes.
of
Yes.
like, "You
Yes.
trying to keep me for the insurance?" Kind of like,
Right.
those
Right.
paranoid, suspicious, and all this whole time we had been together, not one
Right.
time did he ever show any ill intention. And then he said to me in one of like the most, compassionate ways, he's like, "You," it's like, "Babes, you essentially, I am not your father, and you are
Right.
not your mother,
And it's gonna be
and that
okay.
is going to be okay because the choices that you have to trust, the choices that you have made."
Mm.
And so it wasn't me doing it by myself, it was
Right.
me doing
Right.
personal work to realize that the stories I had been told, that I can't trust men, I can't
Right.
trust people with money, I can't trust
Right.
family. I was like, well, damn, that's going to be a really raggedy life, right? And I was looking at the people that were telling me these stories, and I didn't want their lives. I was like,
Right.
that's going to be me in 40 years complaining and griping at the table,
Yes.
overeating,
Yeah.
like,
All of it.
what I mean? All of it. And I was like, there has to be a different way. And so that's when I started to go within, like, what do I really want if I'm
Right.
afraid?
Right.
And sometimes I didn't know, so I need to get some help. So I went to a therapist,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so, yeah. And so that was where it started for me. And then the work around finances came at the time when I was getting out of debt, student loan debt and credit card debt.
Right.
And I started to put two and two together, that
Mm-hmm.
how I was doing many things in my life, the kind of like the emotional hoarding, not the withholding, like
Right.
not being
Right.
overly, demonstrative and loving, even though I wanted to, but I was afraid of giving too much, was
Right.
showing up in how I dealt with finances.
Right.
So
Right.
I started to put two and two together because as I was going through this personal transformation, I was
Right.
also moving up in my career and getting out of debt. But I was
Right.
also realizing that the elimination of the debt wasn't making me any calmer. Like I was making
Mm.
more money, I was making six figures, but still feeling even probably more
Mm.
fearful than before because I had
Mm.
more to lose, I guess.
Right.
And so that is when I started taking these different I went to different retreats and just started working on myself. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started together and testing things out, like, how do I feel when I spend without how do I feel when I spend X amount of money,
Right.
right?
Right.
How does that make me feel? And then how does it feel when I save this amount of money? And I
Mm-hmm.
started to pay attention to what I was feeling. Then I
Right.
had a better understanding of what my fears were,
Right.
what my strengths were.
Right.
One
Absolutely.
thing about Kara Stevens was she will always find a way. She will always be resourceful. But then I
That's
also
it.
really realized after a while, is the world coming to an end? Like, what are you planning for the
Right.
Armageddon?
Right.
What are
Right.
you planning? And then
Right.
I had to put it in perspective. Like
Right.
I had to realize that there's time, money is there for paying bills, money is there for fun and pleasure. And I hadn't learned that lesson. And
Yeah.
that I deserved to have joy in my life. And part
Absolutely.
of joy is having money to fund the joy. And so that's where, I mean, that's like a long way to get to that answer, but I hope that's helpful to anyone's listening
That is
is
very
that it's
helpful.
a journey and that I was also aware of my triggers. So, like in the book, we talk about what are your financial triggers. Some people
Right.
trigger you. You know?
Right.
Some people trigger you to drink. I'm not a drinker, but some people may trigger you to spend or
Right.
hoard because of like
Right.
their kind of critical thinking.
Right.
And so I had to be very conscious and very committed to realizing that I had power. Like for a
Mm-hmm.
while when you have a inherited money story, you feel like you're a victim to these circumstances.
Yes.
But part of
Yes.
the responsibility of rewriting your money story is also the underlying belief that I have personal power
Right.
and I have agency.
Right.
And that's
Right.
and a lot of people don't want to step into that because it will require them to release those stories. And
Yes.
so with that, I would say that's where the kind of journey started. And I always found myself being a little bit more gracious with my frailties and my vulnerabilities
Mm.
and kind of also speaking to younger Kara, like,
Yeah.
because I gave her what she needed. And there were like times, just I'll share some of the stories, high level, because I don't know how much time we have left. But
Yeah.
for a while, I will, as I was going through like life and journeying, and I will have these memories of things that I had wanted that I never could get or was afraid to ask because I didn't want to seem like I was too demanding. When, as a child,
Mm-hmm.
that's not your responsibility. You're just supposed to be a
Right.
kid.
Right.
So I remember being like almost 40 and having this flashback to something that I wanted. And it was as simple as not crossword puzzle, but the word searches. I
Yes.
love word
Yes.
searches. So I pulled up to a gas station and I bought myself a
Yeah.
word search book. Spent the afternoon giving little Kara what she wanted. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that memory could have a new ending.
Yeah.
I
That's
started getting
powerful.
new endings. Yeah, and also I started buying. I'm a girl from, like I said, Hollis, Queens, New York. I was raised in the '80s and '90s. Very Nikes. I couldn't get them, so I gave myself some Nikes when I got older. I said, "Here, Kara, this is what you always wanted, but you couldn't ask for it. So
But you
here
can
you
ask for
go.
it. Yeah.
I can
I,
ask now." Hmm.
I love, first of all, thank you for your honesty. And thank you for sharing that it's a journey. A lot of
Hmm.
times we want to just like do things better, be better with it.
Hmm.
And the whole thing is a process, and hearing you say, one, be reflective. I promise myself I'm gonna buy a t-shirt that says reflective.
Hmm.
I'm a reflective
Hmm.
person or something because I feel like we're always talking about that moment where you take a step back and you reflect, and that you then seek therapy when things were really not making sense for you. But then you were also observing yourself and how your behavior would show and change and be different. And so all of these things are ways in which we can take the power for ourselves. And sometimes you need to hear someone else say it. Like you
Hmm.
really can think about money in multiple ways. One, yes, you have to pay bills, but also for pleasure. And a lot of times we don't allow ourselves pleasure. And we don't realize that we deserve to have that. And I'm really saying
Hmm.
that to myself because I do believe in being, enjoying myself and having good things, but knowing that you deserve it and not that you have to put it off. Like when you have children, and you have children, so you know, oh, I'm gonna get this for the kids first. I'm gonna do this for the kids first. And I'm like, but what about me? Like, I don't need it. That's my going line. I don't need it, but I want to make sure they have, right? And I
Right.
know that that's my grandmother speaking.
Right.
She wanted to make sure I had. So I saw what she wouldn't give herself. I want to make sure they have. So there might be things that I don't give myself. So I think all of those things are important. And that piece around giving your memory a different ending is powerful
Hmm.
because there's
Hmm.
so many things that I know we can think about, and small things, word search, a Barbie doll, a pair of cards, like whatever it was that you were like, I ain't gonna ask because she gonna go off, so I'm not gonna ask for that because that's not essential. It's not milk, it's not bread, it's not what we need, so I can't get that. And being able to say, well, no, I'm gonna buy them Nikes. I'm gonna buy two pair. I'm gonna buy the pink pair. I'm gonna buy the blue pair, and I'm gonna be all right. So
Right.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
And I just want to add to that, what I found is after buying like my Nikes, I have Pandas and I have this other pair. The desire for sneakers went away.
Mm,
Like I
mm,
love my sneakers, I'll get some, but it wasn't this voracious kind of I can't have because I
right.
gave myself permission to have. So then you get to kind of push that memory down because it
Mm,
doesn't haunt you. I mean, I felt
right.
I was a little haunted by that idea of like I couldn't have. Now
Mm,
I can, so I can move on and be at peace. It's kind of like when people think family members come back to you because there was unfinished business.
right.
I finished business,
Right.
finish the business so I can move on.
So you can move on. You finish the business. So for folks who are listening, what would you what would you say they should do to kind of either rewrite their story, and I think we kind of talked about this, but to just
Mhm.
move in a different space, and to just make a different path for themselves as they're thinking about and kind of listening to us and going, yeah, maybe I do, and I'm going to read the book, and all of that. But
Mhm.
what might be an action that they could take to just begin to rewrite their story?
Mhm. Well, I mean, we talked about like the things that they can do themselves, like
Right.
recognize and begin the process of rewriting. But I would say if you wanted something, change your environment. And what I mean by that is
Mm,
if you're on social media, begin to curate your feed with hopeful financial healing accounts that can give you new
mm,
ways of thinking. I think part of the conversation or part of the assumption is you have to do it alone, you have to do it in isolation. And I
right.
think when you're working on a new skill, you need community. And you need to find community that I feel like at different levels. One, where people are teaching you more,
Mm,
maybe two, where you're teaching somebody else. So you get to at least know that you offer something.
mm-hmm.
And then people on the same level as you,
Mm-hmm.
where you have someone a little bit below, above, and at the same level, because they each offer a skill set emotionally as well that can anchor you in the journey
Yeah.
in ways that you may not even realize. So I would say one step is to find a new community that speaks to what you're looking for emotionally.
I love
And
that.
I would say also don't underestimate the power of financial healing as a key lever to building wealth.
Mm, wow. Don't underestimate the power of that financial healing. It may offer you and lead you to financial wealth, generational wealth. That's
Yeah,
powerful.
because when you think about it, like a lot of our wounds, our money wounds, show up in what hoarding money. So
Hoarding.
we're not even getting the best return on our money because we're so afraid that we're going to lose it that we don't even our risk tolerance and our risk capabilities are just out of whack. So risk
Right.
tolerance is like how you feel about your
Right.
ability to endure risk, and your risk capability must be higher because you have this tons of money that
Right.
is just sitting there,
Right.
eroding in terms of value. And on the other hand, you have someone who's an overspender who is kind of shopping their feelings
Mm,
or giving their feelings or giving
mm,
over their power to others through consumption,
right.
and that level of debt is going to keep you from building wealth.
Right.
So each of us have our own, I guess, cross to carry, but
Right.
the healing of that story will allow you to have a little bit more of a reasonable approach to managing risk, to
Right.
managing pleasure, to managing impulses, to managing delayed gratification. For those of
Right.
us that oversave, you don't have an issue with delayed gratification. So just, you're good. That message is not for you. You know what I mean?
That's for me. Thank you. That is
Right,
for
right.
me because
For
I will be
you.
like, I'm not spending. Nope, I'm
Right.
good. I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm waiting. I always have a number. I hit the number and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make the next number. And my husband's
Right.
like, why'd you make that number? Because you just make the next number bigger, and then you
Right.
like, okay. I'm like, yes. So
Right.
that message
Mhm.
is not for me. So good.
Mhm.
That's Kara. If people wanted to reach out to you to work with you or to be in your community,
Yes.
where should they reach out to?
So you can always find me on Instagram, Frugal Feminista. I
Okay.
have a couple. You can get the book on my website
Yes,
as
yes,
well.
yes,
I have my
yes.
I was a little beat up, but yes, we're gonna
Yes, 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 yes. Yes. The
yes.
next time I see you, it'll
Um,
be fully tabbed when I get
I love
through
it.
it.
I
Yes,
love
yes.
tabs. And there's so many different things that are upcoming. We're going to be
Mm-hmm.
having a relationship with money
Okay.
class live. I haven't done
Oh,
this in a while.
okay.
Yes, so I'll definitely let you know about that. And then we'll have just in the upcoming months opportunities to budget together
Okay.
um, with no sense of rigidity and just community and just
Mm-hmm.
like the sense of everything's going to be okay,
Everything's gonna
right?
be okay.
We're here. Let's be present.
Right.
Let's figure out the numbers and let's work the plan. And then let's have a plan for when the plan don't work. Because
Right.
sometimes that's
Let's have the backup plan. Let's have the B and the C plan because you need a backup to the backup.
right. Right, but also for our over savers, that plan's not for you, right? We're gonna
Right.
have another plan where we actually need you to spend some money on yourself because you don't have a problem with budgeting.
Right.
You have a problem with not allowing yourself to see your budget as a place where you can find money to spend on things
Yeah.
that what you don't consider to be necessities.
Yeah.
So we're working on making your wants and your needs have space in your plan. And so for you, we're calling it a spending plan. For other people, we're calling it a savings plan. So
Oh,
we can get the language to
we can
match
get the language.
the needs,
Yes, yes.
right?
Okay, so you know you're gonna be seeing me for sure up in there, because I definitely need to be. Yeah, and it doesn't. I feel like I'm not ashamed to say at 50 something I'm still in this
Mhm,
space of trying to like figure it out and get it together. But I want to get it together because I'm
mhm,
trying to see my way to that next step in a way where I can feel relaxed. Because I know there are folks who say, when you look at your number, when you look at your fire number, whatever number you've now figured out, you might already be at it. And I'm like, could I be at it? I don't know.
mhm.
But at this point, I'm not sure. So I'm looking forward to you sharing that information so I can share that information with others and definitely on my
Mm,
platform for sure.
yes, yes.
Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much. Wait, listen, do you have something to cheers with? We have to cheers. I'm
Oh,
having
my
water
water, yes.
today. Yes, well, we're gonna
Mhm.
cheers. Well, I want to cheers. Thank you so much, sis. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. Appreciate it. Um, and I know there's just so many gems in here for folks. So thank you again, and
Mm.
it's been great.
Yes, I
Thanks.
love this. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope that you found that conversation to be thoughtful. And I'm just so thankful that Carol was willing to come on. I really hope that we break the cycle that we have with our money stories and that we start with reflection. Everything seems to start with reflection. So let's go ahead and do that. This is her website. It's just a screenshot of her website. Feel free to go over and check her out as I get more information about her upcoming lives. She said she's going to have a Heal Your Spending workshop. It's going to be a live. I will make sure to drop that in the description of this. And again, please share this story and this episode with others who you think who would gain something for it. And remember, cheers, not to do all the things because we are constantly doing all the things. So thanks, everyone. See you next Wednesday. Bye.